Excellency Ambassador Scott Delis, U.S. Ambassador to Uganda, Ambassadors and High Commissioners present, my Lord, the Honorable Justice Stephen Kavuma, Colonel Bradley Anderson, Regional Program Manager of the African Center for Strategic Studies, Dr. Benjamin Nichols, Assistant Professor at the African Center for Strategic Studies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to begin by welcoming all of you to Uganda and thanking the African Center for Strategic Studies for organizing this very important workshop and giving me the opportunity and honor to open it. My staff have informed me that we have participants from across the entire East African region, and I would like to take this opportunity to ask you all to feel free to enjoy your stay in Kampala and the rest of Uganda. I've also been informed that this workshop is an initiative of the U.S. Department of Defense and is aimed at networking and building the capacity of our countries to address transnational and irregular threats in our region. As you may already know, the government of the Republic of Uganda is at the forefront of supporting all efforts aimed at fostering interstate cooperation and collaboration in order to enhance regional peace and security. The main goal of this workshop, therefore, is in direct sync with Uganda's foreign policy objectives. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the rise of transnational and irregular threats is no longer a new phenomenon to Uganda and the eastern region as a whole. As you may be aware, Uganda's Pan-African spirit and ideology has meant that we understand our destiny, that our destiny is intertwined with that of our immediate neighbors in the region, the African continent, and the world at large. This, therefore, lends impetus to the reasons why we find ourselves embracing the idea of collective responsibility in strategically responding to threats that affect our region and beyond, however complex they may appear to be. You may also be aware that Uganda has been steadily reconstituting her security apparatus to effectively respond to transnational threats and participate in contributing to regional peace and security initiatives. Our military has now evolved from the rural guerrilla force, then called the National Resistance Army, NRA, in 1986, to a professionalized and modernized robust army today, known as the Uganda People's Defense Force, UPDF, which is now sophisticated enough to take on international peacekeeping missions. It is reassuring to know that the US and the world community are fully aware of the fact that transnational and irregular threats in Eastern Africa pose security concerns for not only the region, but the entire world, and it's good to see that they're now partnering with Uganda and the region in helping to deal with these threats. With the spirit of Pan-Africanism, Uganda has been and continues to be committed to preventing these threats by pioneering challenging peacekeeping operations in countries like Somalia under the ban of AMISOM. We all know that by going to Somalia, Uganda and the countries that we are working with have gotten exposed to reactionary terrorist threats from Al-Shabaab, and that while this terrorist group may have minimally succeeded in effecting some attacks, the region, and Uganda in particular, have not shied away from the noble mission of bringing peace and stability to Somalia. We have directly responded by intensifying strategic missions and instituting counter-terrorism measures at home, including physical and electronic security, improved information gathering systems, as well as setting up robust intelligence analysis centers. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the volatile situation in the Great Lakes region has compelled Uganda to get directly and indirectly involved in bringing peace and security to countries like Burundi, DRC, the Central African Republic, in addition to South Sudan and Somalia. Uganda has found it imperative to intervene both diplomatically and sometimes militarily in the region after discovering that her stability also depends on the stability of her neighbors, the region, and the international community at large. For example, severe negative elements like the Lord's Resistance Army, the ADF, the FDLR, and M23 have been operating in Eastern DRC and the Central African Republic, directly destabilizing not only those countries, but also all their neighbors, and sowing seeds of conflict and misunderstanding amongst our regional governments. Our Eastern African region is currently grappling with all kinds of transnational asymmetric threats, including terrorism, insurgent groups, armed militias, illicit trafficking of people, drugs and weapons, and many other criminal activities. These challenges are not confined to individual countries. They are spread across the region and therefore require some level of integrated defense security system in order to effectively contain them. Unfortunately, many African countries still face internal vulnerabilities which are caused by internal contradictions that give rise to serious threats and enable them to thrive. This means that the countries of the region urgently need to focus and address domestic challenges by entrenching democratic practices with special emphasis on the rule of law, by addressing issues of underdevelopment and poverty, porous borders, and unemployment. I'm informed that the participants in this workshop are drawn from a diversity of institutions with varied experience and specialized expertise. It is my sincere hope, therefore, that this special audience will give varying angles to the challenge of how to respond to the threats facing our region today. To this point, I can sincerely submit that this workshop could not have taken place at a better time and place. Uganda is very pleased that the United States government, through the African Center for Strategic Studies, has partnered with us to provide a platform where the Eastern African region can get an opportunity to discuss and coin multidimensional approaches to peace building and security. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, allow me now to move and explain a little more about Uganda's own experience in dealing with the transnational threats that have confronted us over the years. As I've said before, it is of paramount importance to strengthen the state if we are to successfully handle such complicated threats as we face today. Our countries need to entrench democratic practices and the rule of law if they are to withstand the kind of challenges that confront us, especially from without. You may have to recall that in the immediate period after independence, many of our countries were greatly weakened by internal bickering and conflicts, and at times open wars over the question of how the post-independent state should be governed. In several countries, the resultant wars were fueled by spillovers from the Cold War and the quest by some post-independence leaders to play the catch-up game with their former colonial masters. In Uganda, for example, it has taken us close to 30 years to overcome the weaknesses that resulted from the post-independence wars. In this regard, we have literally had to rebuild the state from a failed situation to the level where political and social disagreements can now be resolved through legally acceptable means as elections. We are laying great emphasis on democratic practices by providing an enabling atmosphere for fundamental human rights and freedoms to grow, and by ensuring that the courts of law function in a timely manner in accordance with the law. What this means is that internal challenges and threats cannot be resolved according to the law, and that external challenges, our security, and that of our neighbors can be successfully fended off in the context of a strong functioning state. It is noteworthy that situations where the state remains weak, such countries tend to succumb to all sorts of external threats, including becoming a haven for terrorists and insurgent groups, which in turn destabilize their neighbors. We have seen such examples in Eastern DRC with groups like the ADF, M23, as well as Al-Shabaab in Somalia, which have taken advantage of the absence of an effective state to bring terror to the people in areas they control and also to threaten other countries. A weak state, therefore, also becomes the conduit for drugs and human traffickers. It also becomes a breeding ground for diseases like HIV/AIDS and a source for marauding refugees in neighborhoods. All in all, a weak state can become a major destabilizing factor for the region and the world at large. It is therefore a strong belief that African countries should invest a lot in building strong democratic institutions that can handle not only internal challenges, but also fend off external threats. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as you may already know, prominent among the insurgent groups that have affected Uganda is the Allied Democratic Forces, ADF, which began as an Islamist extremist organization that started the operations around the mid-1990s, primarily as disgruntled members of one of the Islamic sects in Uganda. However, by 1998, after being challenged by the government security apparatus, they retreated into the Eastern DRC and started training for all-out invasion. In 1998, the group was bold enough to attempt an invasion of Uganda, but got defeated in the areas of Kasese and Kabarole districts in western Uganda. They then changed tactics and started carrying out sporadic terror attacks on soft targets around the country, including schools in the rural areas and bars in the city. It was at this point that we streamlined our counter-terrorism apparatus with the formation of the Joint Anti-Terrorism Task Force. By 1999, the group had been decimated, and their ringleaders, led by one Jamil Mukulu, retreated back into the remote areas of Eastern DRC. Today, they continue to train and prepare to invade Uganda again. Given their location in another country, there is little that we can do without full collaboration of the host state. Therefore, while we may be here exploring modalities of responding to this complexity of threats, most of which are asymmetric, there are issues of international law which has to be put into consideration, especially the notions of sovereignty and inviolability of international borders, which mar our abilities to decisively respond to transnational threats. I hope you'll discuss some of these issues in this workshop. Prior to the ADF, and before we could even build our security forces into the formidable military that they are today, the counter-revolutionary forces of Idi Amin and military Obote, whom we had defeated in 1986, reorganized and managed to secure support from the fundamentalist regime in Khartoum. The American government, which has agreed to partner with us and deploy advisors to help us track down Joseph Kony and his group. I must say, we have had considerable success with this assistance, and a few days ago, we were able to put out of action one Brigadier Binani, who was one of Kony's closest bodyguards and also a logistics coordinator. In the last 6 months alone, we have also rescued from the LRA about 200 abductees, mostly children and women. This group is now said to have infiltrated the rebels, vying to topple the government in the Central African Republic. And so the reason why Uganda, like all other peace-loving nations of this world, should respond to this threat by contributing to the restoration of peace and security in that country. I've already spoken about Al-Shabaab, which originally seemed distant from Uganda, given that their main operating base in Somalia, a country with which we don't share a border. Given that their main operating base is in Somalia, a country with which we don't share a border. Time has shown that terror in one country of the region affects all the countries around it, given the fluidity of the culprits. The activities of the Shabaab are now spread throughout the whole of Eastern Africa and are also affecting the rest of the world, especially if we look at their impact on the shipping lines on the eastern coast of Africa. Uganda is therefore committed to fighting the Shabaab, not only because of their terrorist activities affecting us directly, but also because we need to re-energize the spirit of Pan-Africanism. The people of Somalia have suffered more than enough now, and the rest of Africa and the world have a responsibility to make that country peaceful once again. We are all aware of the events that are happening in the Central African Republic and Mali, especially the fact that the LRA has reportedly merged with anti-government forces in the Central African Republic, and that Al-Qaeda has been making frantic efforts to take over Mali. These two cases serve as examples that compel the Eastern African region to urgently enhance regional defense planning as a response mechanism to avert such situations. Uganda recognizes the potential for committed regional responses with strong international backing. Although these responses may seem difficult to achieve due to perceived challenges like overlapping of several AU-recognized regs and prominent subordinate regional categories, the Eastern African region can still harmonize its responses to these threats by forging closer cooperation that enables real-time information sharing and rapid reaction. This is the same principle that is being emphasized by the African Union by setting up the African Standby Force. On this note, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to stop here and wish you very fruitful deliberations, and allow me to take the honor to declare the workshop officially open. I thank you.